Welcome to My Forever Home, the podcast. I'm Frances Cosway and I've helped hundreds of people create forever homes. I can't wait to share the journey with you. So let's start. Hello and welcome to Your Forever Home, the podcast. And this is episode 2 of the Kitchen Design Essential Season. We've had some great response already to what's going to be in store for this Kitchen Design Essential Season. So I'm really excited to now bring you today how to determine what you need in your kitchen. And this is really all about what you need and around your lifestyle and how you're going to be using your kitchen, rather than thinking about all the other things that people may have. Now, I go back to this time and time again. Not only if you've been following me for a while, you know that I say this a lot, but I also say it to my clients very often, and that is, don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Because this is a home, your forever home is for you. And you need to design it around your lifestyle. You need to design it around your needs. And so the kitchen is really important in terms of making sure that it's going to work for you. And not what everyone else is doing, and not what they're doing up the road, and they've got a steam oven and they've got a teppanyaki grill. Just focus on what you need. One of the biggest joys in creating a home that you know you're going to be in for a long time, your forever home, as I've always called it, is that you get to design it for you and that it's specifically bespoke for your requirements. So stick with that mantra and you really can't go wrong. So what I wanted to talk to you about today was really around determining what you need in your kitchen. So I'm going to talk about storage. I'm going to talk about your cleaning requirements. What sort of cook are you? What sort of baker are you? And what sort of functionality and lifestyle requirements do you need to make sure that this kitchen is going to serve you exactly as it needs to? Kitchens are the hub of the home. Since we've been living in open style homes for quite a few decades now, they need to work super hard because they sit in the center of our home more often than not. They need to perform multiple functions. It's not just about cooking anymore. They're breakfast bars, entertainment areas, they're baking spaces, they're homework areas, they're workspaces. They are so many different things for so many different people. And so we need to make sure we think about what we actually need in our kitchen. So what we do as part of a service to our clients is we do what I call a kitchen deep dive. And that's basically an assessment to work out all the different requirements that our clients need for their kitchen. So it's not just about the aesthetic, it actually forms the foundation of the design. And so for me, the design of the kitchen is not just about, well, this is the space, and so let's stick some cupboards there and a couple of drawers there, and then when we move in, we'll work out where all of that stuff goes. No. We actually go back to that at the start, and before we even put pen to paper, or we go to the computer and start designing a kitchen, we've actually assessed with the client, where are they going to store their things? Where ideally should things go? Where are their appliances go? How do they, how do they operate as a family? I know some families will have a very specific area to prepare breakfast. They might have a coffee station area. How do they ideally want to be able to store things, and where do they need to go? And so there's a lot of thinking that is involved before we even start the design process. And that's what I want you to think about too. The thinking before you actually start is critical to what your outcome is. And I suppose this is also where, if you've got an external party that can assist you to think outside the box and provide solutions that you hadn't even thought of or when you're available, that's where you're going to get really good value add. So think about what your ideal is when you're doing your assessment. Try not to think about how you live in your kitchen now, and don't be constrained by your current situation. I know I've had clients, I need to really get them to visualize and think, I suppose it's thinking blue sky. So if I could have any sort of environment in my kitchen as I could, what would that be? And then we try and work to that as much as we possibly can. So think about that and try not to be constrained about how things are set up at the moment and how you store things at the moment. Think about, well, if I could start from scratch, what would be my ideal? Where would I want to store my plastic containers? Where do I want my saucepans to be? Do I want them all just laid out in one layer, or am I happy to have them stacked? So think about what your ideal is. However, if there's something in your current kitchen that really works for you and you love the way that operates, don't discount that. Make sure that that then gets taken over into your new design. But I really want you to remove yourself from what the Joneses are doing. And if you could see me now, I've got my inverted commas up because I'm, as I said to you slightly earlier, don't worry about what the Joneses are doing. And I suppose the difference here between your forever home and a home that may be being renovated to flip is when you're doing it to flip, you're thinking about what the target audience is going to want in their kitchen. So if you're in a blue chip area, you may be expecting that those people are going to be wanting a Steve oven, or they want the latest appliances and they want the latest gadgets. However, you can remove yourself from that completely because you're doing this for you. So design it for yourself, your family, and what you need, not what other people's expectations are. I can be quite crass here, but I suppose I'd say, to hell with that really, because this is about you. You don't need a steam oven if you don't cook. You don't need a wok burner if you don't cook Asian cuisine, or you don't use wok in your cooking. So that is what I really want to hone in for you. You can have all the bells and whistles, but if you're not really going to use it, it's an absolute waste of money and it's a waste of space. Let's get this kitchen working super hard. So that for me is the beauty of what separates a forever home and designing for a forever home and a house that flips. So determine what type of cook you are, so that we can work out how you need your kitchen to work. So do you entertain often? Do you bake often? Do you make jam and preserve food? Do you make your own pastry, which means you need a big, long lateral bench space? Do you have a kitchen that is not going to be used that often, and so the materials you're going to choose could be completely different to a cook that is a really frequent cook. So think about the type of cook that you are, but also think so that you're future-proofing. Okay, look, this is my lifestyle now. We're professionals, we go out a lot, we don't really cook that much at home. Think about how that may change if you do end up having children and your lifestyle is going to change. Because for me, it's also about future-proofing, not ridiculously in terms of having every gadget, of course, but making sure that you're, able to think about, well, what may change if we are, going to have children, or we may have pets, or whatever it is. How might that change how we're using that area? Because it's not just the kitchen itself, but it's that whole area, the dining area, the dining table, and all those sorts of things. So, but working out the type of cook you are actually determines the space that you'll need, the appliances that you'll need, where you're going to store things, and also how much storage you're going to need for particular things. Then you need to think about, how does your kitchen need to perform for you and your family? So if you've got a show kitchen because you really don't cook very often, as I was saying earlier, that is going to determine the materials that you can choose. You won't need to be as cautious around materials that may be, like a Carrara marble is quite porous, and so they're great for show kitchens. But if you're someone that's going to cook frequently and lemon and red wine are not going to be its friend because it's so porous, then that is also going to determine then what materials you're going to use. If you know that you're going to have kids bashing into the side of the bench all the time and kicking their feet underneath, that's going to also determine really hard wearing materials that are not going to stress you out, because the kids are being, a bit rough and tumble with things. And think about how this kitchen is going to perform for you and your family. So if you don't cook that frequently, you can have more of a show kitchen. How much lateral space do you need? And not just lateral space for pastry and baking and things like that, but also lateral space for having it as a breakfast bar, having it as a wine bar when your friends come over and they're all leaning over the bench, because that's really the hub of the home. But think about the lateral space that you may need when you're entertaining, and that big island bench can actually become a buffet area where all your food is prepared and people can serve themselves. So this lateral space is really important. And is it an entertainment zone? Is it going to be a casual dining area and a breakfast bar? Is it going to be an area where you may end up doing the bookwork? Is it going to be where the kids are going to do their homework so you can keep an eye on what they're doing on their screens? So what are other things does your kitchen need to do rather than it being just a food preparation area? And we also need to be really considerate and very, I'd say, planned in terms of what storage do we need. And interestingly, I just did a podcast last week with The Art of Decluttering, and we talked around how to declutter, but we also talked about how to work out and design around your storage needs. So rather than, as I was saying before, having cabinetry for cabinetry's sakes, it's working out what do we need to store, how do I need to store it, and where do I need to store it. And I was talking on that podcast about that in terms of a whole home perspective. But think about it from a kitchen perspective. What do you need to store? Where do you want it to be stored? So it's really easy for you to access. So things that you're going to need on a daily basis, a weekly basis, versus things that you only get out at Christmas time, or things that you really only get out once or twice a year when you've got big entertaining, when you're entertaining for a large amount of people. So how often you need to access is it important, because that'll determine where it goes. The size it is and how much of it you may have, that will also determine where it needs to go, but also what it is. So things like, and these are things that I want you to think about, where's your food going to go? And it might be daily things like your oil and your spices that you need to access while you're cooking versus pantry store items versus fresh produce. So think about your food. Think about your appliances, and I'm not talking about your stove and your dishwasher. They are also important, and there's going to be a whole podcast just on appliances. But all your smaller appliances, your KitchenAid, your toaster, your sandwich maker, your popcorn maker. In our deep dive, we list about 20 different appliances that you may have in your kitchen, and we think about where are they going to go. One of the key ones is the microwave. Is it going to go in the would you ideally like it in the pantry so it's out of sight, or do you want it in the kitchen because the kids use it all the time? We will be talking about that in the appliance episode. But are you after a tea and coffee station where everything's together? So does that mean that where your kettle is, does that mean you want all your tea and coffee right where the kettle is, or do you want that in another location? Is it going to be a kids prep area so that they can easily access their cereals, their toast, all those sorts of things, so that they're a little bit more independent and self-sufficient? Where are you going to put all your baking items, your baking trays, your tins and all those sorts of things? How often do you bake? Do you have much in terms of bakeware that you need to store? Some of that stuff may be ideally stored upright. Some of it may be better in drawers. So think about those items too. What about your bins? How many bins do you need? And would you prefer to have them large or small? Are they going to be in a different drawer? You're happy to have them under the sink? How often do you want to go out to the bin to actually take out your kitchen waste to the bin that's actually going to be collected? Where are your chopping boards going to go? What about your detergents and your trays and your chopping boards, your cookware? Your crockery, your glasses and your mugs. Some of those things will be in cupboards, some of those things will be in drawers. In your coffee station, you may have all your mugs right there. So effectively, when you're at your kettle and your coffee machine, everything is there. You don't need to take a step. Other people like all those things to be together, depending on how often they are making tea and coffee. So this is where your frequency of access, what you're needing to access and what you need to store is so critical. And you can see, just going through this process, what the impact on it has on the design of your kitchen. And so I don't want you to go down the route of, we've got a whole lot of cupboards and we've got a whole lot of drawers, and we basically are just going to do a bit of guesswork as to where this all goes. And I see it happen so many times, rather than designing right from the outset and assessing everything that you've got so everything has a place. And when you move back in, you will know where everything goes. We even go into the detail of saying every single cupboard and drawer, exactly what's going to go in there based on the kitchen deep dive. We know what's required, so we've got a place for absolutely everything. So you can assess it all at floor plan stage, ideally, and then you can make changes rather than moving in and saying, I don't really have a spot for that, or it's not really where I wanted it to go. The thinking is critical, And for those of you who follow me as well, will know that I say this a lot, and that is floor plan is king. And so all this detail in your joinery design effectively determines how you're going to work and live and be in that kitchen space. So getting back to what are other things that you need to store? Plastic containers. Do you want to have a utility drawer where you can have pens, paper, tea towels, close to hand? Where are your oven mitts going to go? Your cooking utensils? In my own kitchen, I've got utensils that I've got in my walk-in pantry for when I'm actually preparing and baking in there, because that's where the KitchenAid is. But I also then have another set next to the stove for different types of cooking. And I actually also have, and this is probably because my husband and I each had a set of, really good knives when we met each other, because we're both really big cooks. So we've got a block of knives in the walk-in pantry, and we've got a block of knives in our actual kitchen space. So, where are those things going to go? And what do you want to have on show? You may have a magnificent coffee machine that you actually really want to be pride of place in the kitchen, or would you prefer to have that in the walk-in pantry? What about your cookbooks? It's really lovely to walk into a kitchen where they have got other elements in there and it's not just cabinetry. You might have some open shelves for maybe beautiful kitchen artifacts, or some antique scales, or to have a trailing plant, or to have your cookbooks on display. It may even be the ones that you use really frequently, and the other ones that you don't use as frequently can be actually stored somewhere else. So it all comes back to, what do you want to be stored, and ideally how would it all be configured? What are the cleaning requirements as well? So what drives you mad? Are there fingerprints on cupboards that are just going to, drive you absolutely bat crazy? Then we need to think about what the materials may be. And there's going to be a whole episode just on cabinetry materials. And that's going to help you determine what are the materials that are really critical for you in terms of what are your bugbears for cleaning. I've had a client who had a melamine kitchen, and it was white, and it was really difficult for her to clean because over the years, all the little bits of grime basically get stuck in the particles. It's not a smooth surface. So that drove her absolutely nuts. And so we absolutely made sure that we weren't specifying a product that was going to drive her crazy. I mean, when you're building a new kitchen, you want to make sure that all those little bugbears from your current kitchen are absolutely eliminated. But you also would want to think about, is the cleaning requirement more important than the aesthetics? And this will also come down to your durability requirements and whether they're going to be, and functionality, going to be more important than aesthetics. Sometimes you need to weigh up, and you may need to make a compromise in one area to fulfill your other requirement that is more important. So really, how to determine what you need in your kitchen involves a lot of sitting down and working out what you need in terms of your storage requirements, what you need from a cleaning requirement, the type of kitchen that you're going to have, the lifestyle that this kitchen is going to give you, the type of cook that you are, but also really critically that you're not just putting in a whole lot of cabinetry to fill a space without it being analysed in detail where everything goes. For me, everything should have a place before the kitchen before it even starts being built. So I hope that has helped you in terms of thinking about and creating an analysis. If you do need some assistance with working out, goodness me, how am I going to know where everything goes? We can perform a kitchen deep dive with you, and then you've got that analysis piece. So by all means, get in touch. We're here to help you get the best out of your kitchen. And as they always say, kitchens sell homes, but also kitchens, when it is your forever home, and we're not thinking about our resale value at that point in time, but kitchens are the absolute core to a home. And because they need to perform so many different functions, you don't want to mess up the design and compromise on getting really good joinery design that's going to work for you so much harder than if it's just, a plug-in, we're just going to do this because we've always done it like this when in terms of your cabinetry. So, go away and have a really good think about what you have. And it's also an awesome opportunity to do a little bit of decluttering, appliances that you really don't use. If you use them once a year, but you could actually do without them, get rid of them. And I encourage you to listen to the Art of Decluttering podcast. It's actually called Your Forever Home, and it was launched on the 22nd of June. So you'll be able to find that on the Art of Decluttering website, because we do talk about how to design for storage rather than the other way around, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. So have some fun doing a little bit of analysis on how you want your kitchen to be and how you're going to store everything and where's everything going to have a place and how often do you need to access it, which will often then determine where it needs to go. So until next time, the Kitchen Design Essentials season next week is going to be all about kitchen design layouts. So what are the different designs and the different types of layout? And I'm going to be talking about the advantages and disadvantages about that. And we're also going to have our first guest. So that's going to be exciting. And I hope that you have got a lot of information now to go and do a little bit of analysis for your own kitchen. And I look forward to having you here next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of My Forever Home. If you're ready to renovate or build a new home and you need help to create a beautiful and functional forever home, you can book a chat with me directly at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au/chat. Have a great day.